Recycling hit the headlines recently to everyone's surprise because China, one of the biggest importers of the world's waste, has severely tightened restrictions on what it's allowing into the country in a battle against what it calls foreign garbage. This is after a huge backlash against potentially hazardous and really contaminated waste being put into rivers and into landfills because it couldn't be used by their recycling centres. The UK has sent 2.7 million tonnes of cardboard and plastic to China since 2012, which is about the same size as 20,000 blue whales. The new regulations are actually a really cool opportunity for the UK to develop its own infrastructure, but why were we sending trash abroad in the first place? Well, first off, China makes a lot of the world's products and it's cheaper to buy used plastic to be recycled than to make brand new plastic. And it's proved a cheap option for UK councils who have been able to up recycling rates without having to change any of the processes in the UK. If you didn't realise that recycling quality was a thing, me either, but it all makes sense when you take a long look at it. We're actually meant to rinse stuff out before we recycle it because recyclers sell our waste on, and if it's dirty, it counts as contaminated, which means nobody wants to buy it. Which all makes sense, but contamination isn't always understood and it's not at the top of people's agendas. Most people agree that recycling is essentially good. It makes sense to make the most of what we have in a world with shrinking resources, and images of plastic oceans in Blue Planet 2 has brought the damage that our waste can do out of the unknown and into living rooms like never before. But while people might be hunky-dory with recycling, in theory, it can be difficult for people to put it into action, either because they think it's difficult or time-consuming, or because people don't think it will really make a difference. At the moment, each different council in the UK is in charge of its own recycling collections, which means that everywhere you go, the rules about what you can recycle and how you have to sort it are a little bit different. There have been calls to make the system more cohesive, which would make messaging easier, but one of the reasons that everywhere is different is because each area is unique. The houses and the flats are different, and the people who live inside them have completely different habits. Places where they have mostly houses will probably have a better chance getting people to separate their recycling, because you don't have as far to go to put your bins out. But if you live in a place with mostly flats or you live in a high rise, then it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult because people don't have space for more than one bin and they have to traipse up and down flights of stairs to put their bins out. So how can you make sure that the things you do want to recycle have the best chance of getting a second life? We are off to meet a man who is so clued up about recycling, he's literally a doctor of it, Adam Reed. And we're lucky enough that we can go around the Suez recycling plant in Birmingham so we can see what happens to our waste after we put it in the recycling bin. Behind us.
That's a bale of HDPE, effectively milk bottles. It's good valuable material. There's probably 100 to 150 pounds per bale.
Amazing, there you go. So your milk bottles are worth something.
One man's trash is another man's cash, as they say, and those of us working in the waste and recycling industry are trying to make a small profit on what goes on. So we'll take a mix of materials that will have an inherent value if only you can keep them clean, keep them separate and get them onto the end market in a format and in a quality that suits their demands and their needs.
And is that a big problem here, things like contamination or things being not separated properly?
Yeah, I think for us the biggest problem is the non-target material. So you think it's plastics, we want plastics, but we don't. You know, plastic films, yes, yogurt pots, no, drinking bottles, yes. So black plastic trays, no. The list goes on. It's understanding what your local authority is targeting. We can then design a system to separate each type of plastic or each glass or the different grades of paper. But we can only do that if we know what's coming in. So we don't want food slops in your, left over in your pots and trays. They make it harder they encourage vermin. It goes in as it's collected at the curbside. So if you've not washed it, we get it dirty, it goes through there. That means we could start getting an awful lot of a certain plastic container in the wrong stream, and that's just a problem for us later.
Which means that you can't process it properly.
No, ultimately it'll get into a bale of what looks like really clean HDPE, and suddenly you're finding that 10–15% is contamination because it's not HDPE. That value of that plastic would go from, I don't know, £150 per bale down to maybe £10 or £15 per bale. Most people don't realise that 80–90% of your aluminium can has already been recycled more than once. So when you're at the supermarket thinking about what am I buying for dinner, do you want the black plastic full of carbon that maybe isn't recyclable, or do you want to choose a container that's got high recycled content, like your HDPE, for example, that you know is going to go back into good use 6 weeks down the line? We can make those choices at the supermarket.
There you go. So next time you're in the supermarket, if you're looking at a black plastic tray or something else like HDPE, I don't know how you can tell, just look at the bottom of the packet because then you know it can be recycled at the end of the line. Everywhere's different. Every local authority has different rules, but is there anything that people can do everywhere that means that recycling is easier for you when it gets to the plant?
There's a couple of things. One is just keep it simple. You know, whatever your authority wants, make sure that's what we get, and don't guess. Don't think, well, does it mean this? If it's not on their list, we don't want it. Listen to the updates, because there's market changing all the time. So what used to be collectible, like black plastic trays, many authorities now aren't collecting.
Yeah.
So again, listen to the updates, and then just give it a rinse. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we want to see a plastic bottle that looks like a plastic bottle, not something that's full of stuff that we've then got to handle and treat. So keep it simple, keep it reasonably clean, keep it target material, and we can do the rest.
We now have a unique opportunity here in the UK to change the way that we recycle. Whether you think that we should be developing infrastructure locally or finding new places to send our rubbish abroad, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and tune in next time when we're going to be looking at a trial helping a group of gym goers stay fit and cut their meat consumption. Bye.